Chaos, Student Workforce Management Tools. My name is Beth Rugg from UNC Charlotte. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator for SIGUCCS, and I'll be helping to facilitate this event. Andrew Lyons is an IT support specialist at the University of Albany. He's been in this position for 5 years and manages a student workforce of 20 to 25. So with that introduction, we want to jump right into the presentation, Organizing Chaos. I'm turning it over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Beth, and hello, everybody. I'm here today to talk about tools and processes that can facilitate managing student employees who help us provide the services that we provide. Before we get into the details, I want to just tell you a little bit about myself, where I'm coming from. I've worked in IT for about 10 years, a couple years as a student and several as a professional. I started out at Hamilton College and then worked at Hobart and William Smith colleges, and I'm now at the University of Albany, which is part of the State University of New York. Here we have about 17,000 students, grad and undergraduate, about 6,000 employees. I work for ITS, in which we have about 125 employees. We support enterprise services, infrastructure, a good deal of the desktop support for the campus, and the information commons computing facilities, so the library, lab areas, classrooms, that sort of thing. Helping us do that, we have about 25 student tech consultants who cover 4 walk-up locations. Our main help desk, the front counter, actually from my office, and 3 satellite desks in the library information commons areas. Collectively, they record about 2,500 support interactions per year, which is a significant help to us. And there's certainly more than that doesn't get reported, the little things. Just don't quite go there. So, as managers of student workforce, my experience indicates there are 4 main kinds of functions that the managers do. There's this recruitment and onboarding of employees, finding out who's going to help you do what you need to do, and getting them up to speed so they can actually perform the duties you require of them. Filling out and maintaining the schedule, so who's going to be where when and what happens when things change, because things always change. Monitoring attendance, punctuality, make sure people are where they need to be, and dealing with modifications as necessary if you have an unexpected hole in coverage, just figuring that out. And then after work has happened, collecting, recording, verifying timesheets, and submitting to payroll so that the student employees can actually get paid for the work they do. These duties and functions take a good deal of time, and there are some common solutions for helping managers do these. We're going to focus on tools that help with the scheduling, attendance, and payroll functions, not so much the recruitment and onboarding, but the latter 3 sections. First up, we're going to look at manual tools, which are a good, easy start. And this is generally spreadsheets for the schedule. Fill out a grid like the image you're seeing now with when your coverage begins on a particular day and ends, and then who's going to be in there for what periods of time. It's very straightforward. Anyone who's got any experience in, say, Excel could set this up really quickly. Communicating of changes, if someone's going away and wants to cover and not work a particular shift, typically done by email. The payroll portion would be covered by a paper timesheet. So somebody's working 8 to 12, they write on 8 to 12 and sign off, manager signs off, sends it on in. These are very simple solutions. They're easy to set up. The trouble is once you start scaling up to a larger staff, managing 4 employees in one area where you can physically see them, that's great. But you start talking about multiple locations, a bunch of employees, rapid changes, it gets tough. So the scale issues that we run into are typically that changes would go through a manager in this scenario. And if you have many changes, manager becomes a bottleneck. With student schedules that are busy, things change, and so they would send a request into the manager, who would update the schedule, release a new copy of the schedule, or email out that it's approved, something like that. But the manager has other things to do than sit there and watch the schedule all day, reprint if it's a physical thing. It gets cumbersome there. The verifiability comes in on the timesheets. If students show up a few minutes late or a few minutes early, the timesheet is probably still going to reflect the 00 hour. If they leave a bit early or stay a little bit late, it's still going to probably reflect the 00 hour. Again, that's simple, but it's not really accurate. Or even if they don't even show up, they could still write down the number, and as long as the manager doesn't know that that person was not there, they're probably going to get paid for it. This is incentives. It's really easy to fake and fudge a paper timesheet. Some people have a manager sign off, employees sign in on your desk every time. That's tough. Again, if you get multiple locations, it doesn't scale. The incentives also are not good. Some employees will show up a few minutes early to try and cross with whoever they're replacing, just make sure they get set up and ready to go on time. Maybe they'll stay a few minutes late to let the next person know what's going on that day. But if they're still getting paid only the 0 hour, there's no incentive for that. And like I said earlier, if people show up late or leave early and they still get paid, no incentive. There are some possible mini solutions like sharing a document, but then you can't really verify who makes a change, and they could be modified at the last moment. So the manual tools are good on a small scale, simple environment, but when you get bigger, you get more and more need of a packaged solution that is built to do this sort of management. We're going to talk about a few types of solutions to address these in the scale issues. Specifically, we're going to talk about 3 paid hosted solutions first that are in use at SIGUCCS schools. The first is whentowork.com. It's straightforward. It is very popular. A lot of schools have this in play now. It does have a related service, whentohelp.com, which is for nonprofit volunteer type things that may qualify for some of us. It does scheduling. The employees can be set to specific roles, so they get access to certain locations. If you have a repair shop, a classroom group, a basic walk-up counter, those might be things that certain people are authorized for. The schedule can be automatically populated, and I'll show you a bit about picking availability soon. But the schedule can be filled in based on when to work's data, and then the employees can trade shifts. This is actually one of the really nice features of when to work, is they can put up an offered trade. So for example, if someone wants to go home for the weekend, they can post, I'd like to hit the road Friday, but I'm working Friday night. Can someone cover me? And if someone can, great. They'll actually execute the swap. If somebody can't, then they stay and work, and nothing is lost. When to Work also, uniquely in my experience, has a live test drive link up on their website. You just click the link, choose if you want to see the employee or manager role, and you're in. It's a read-only, but a live copy of their environment. There's integrated messaging, so you can send alerts to text phones, emails, whatever you'd like to. That's set in on the employees' profiles in there. It does have a current dashboard, so the manager can easily see who's on where or who's supposed to be on where. And also the schedule can be easily exported to some common formats. I believe it was Outlook and Gmail, perhaps some others. So the schedule on when to work can be in a couple of different views. This is a list divided by position. You can see here that the text isn't terribly legible, but this is a place that has 7 different locations with a few students scheduled to cover each of those locations for different hours. You've got the name of the location, when the shift is, how long the shift is, and the notation. So if people need to coordinate the lunch, they're assigned to take a break in the middle there. And then a handy total for the manager on the right there. The availability that I mentioned earlier, which feeds into the automatic population of the schedule, can be set by the employees. This is a nice graphical interface for that. You can click and drag on the rectangles here to set what times you want to help or want to work, are available to work but don't really want to, and are not available to work, as well as sort of one-off vacation and indicating when you're already working. That's very easy to use. I did that in the test drive. It's simple, easy, good. Manager can fill in a good deal of the schedule with the automatic algorithm, and there are some parameters that can be set on that. If there are holes in a schedule, or if you don't want to completely fill it in, you can then look at the schedule and see the unassigned shifts. That's the highlighted ones on the left. You can then click on it and see who is available with current schedule data to fill those shifts, and then choose who can fill them. You see that some people are not available to fill it. They're already working, or they don't have availability at that time, and that's indicated, but they still show up. So it's a pretty straightforward way to fill it in. The next one we'll look at gets a little bigger, a little more robust. It's Schedule Sources Teamwork tool. This is the employee scheduling module of their suite. They've got quite a few modules, but the employee scheduling is the filling your people, filling your locations, who's authorized to work where. They have an indicated priority of location, which can be helpful if you have to cover one spot. Another spot has alternate backup. For example, we have to have students in the libraries because we don't have staff there, but our walk-up help desk counter, we have staff to back that up, so it is less of an issue if we don't have students here. Or you could authorize people that the priorities can be used in that fashion. It also has a current status dashboard like when to work, so you can see, I'm sorry, it does not have a current status dashboard in the employee scheduling module, but it does have that in the time and attendance module, which is an add-on, maybe additional pricing. It also does have the shift trading feature. I don't believe it has a swap board to request, but people can trade shifts. There is the option, and this is where the sort of corporate angle comes into play, of integrating with time clock equipment. Schedule Source has those features, which are probably a bit overkill for our uses, but may be relevant if you're in a really distributed environment. The schedule for Schedule Source, again, can be viewed in a few different ways. And this has quite a few filters, views, sorting options available. This is the list view of schedules just in line. You can see what the shift is, where it is, who is assigned to it, and make changes if you like at the right. Similar to when to work, the employees can choose when they are available and unavailable. Just choose a time and date as available and then not. Beginning and end. This is pretty much like setting up your meeting calendar. This we're probably used to for work. The third commercial product we're going to look at is shift planning. They have a big focus on automation, and it appears to be a very mature product. They have a lot of features that appear to be quite well done. So similarly, the schedule can be automatically or manually filled out. It does have the ability to trade shifts. The permissions here are very detailed. pretty exceptionally, actually. So different roles can have access to different parts of the site. So this would facilitate having a student manager or alternate staff who might cover for the student manager or for the manager of students during vacation time. Maybe they don't need access to everything, but they need to be able to monitor and modify the schedule as necessary. Shift planning also, like Teamwork, has time clock integration. Their time clock devices and apps, which can be put on mobile devices, include the option of GPS and camera integration. So if you want to get GPS coordinates and an image of the person punching in at a time and place, it is possible. Shift planning says it can integrate with single sign-on payroll applications, which could be very helpful. Directly export to payroll, not even dealing with printing of timesheets at all. Single sign-on would be really nice because you don't have to manage another password. We all have enough of those already. They can also tie into social media, maybe post changes to closed Facebook groups, something like that. Schedule here is quite nice, shows who's on where, a couple different views. This is the weekly view divided by person. There's also a daily view by person. You can see who's where. The shifts are color-coded for location. Shift planning integrates and makes payroll information really easy. Here's a summary of employee hours and shifts showing to let the manager easily see where they stand relative to budget. This information can be quickly exported. It can also be showed in some other places, for example, on the schedule. But what if you don't want a commercial tool? What if you don't want to buy? You've got a couple options. You can build your own tool or go with an open source solution. First, we're going to talk about Homegrown Tools. Now, pros of these are that you can do whatever you want with it whenever you want because it is your own tool. You can customize it exactly what you need with only the features that you need and exactly the features that you need. You can make changes when you need them. So if a new feature comes on, go for it, put it in, and there's no cost, no contract. Now, we all know that Homegrown Tools are not. That's not the end of the story. There's some cons. The catch is that you're on the hook for support. So if something goes wrong, you can't call the company, complain that something went wrong, and they fix it because they have a contract with you. Now, you or your developers need to manage priorities and figure it out yourselves. The whole no-cost thing just means you're not literally paying money to anyone. Developer time is a cost. Or internal management resources are costs, but different institutions can have a spare of each. Maybe you do have extra cash hanging around and a paid solution is good. Maybe you have extra developer time hanging around or really not cash, so this is a little more appealing. Alternatively, you can go with an open source solution. There are a few out there. We're going to talk about one called Portal, which is a solution developed at Pomona College and Bucknell University. It's a PHP front end talking about MySQL on the back end. It's highly customizable. This is the product that we actually use here at U Albany. And I find it meets our needs very nicely. We built some custom features for it, little things that it ties into. Like many open source projects, it doesn't have official support. This one hasn't grown terribly big, so there's not a whole lot of community around it. But once it's up and running, it is pretty much running. It does have a current status dashboard. That's what you're looking at here. On the left side is who is currently punched in and where. On the top center is what the current schedule is. Those two should match pretty well. And at the bottom center is a quick heads up about that employee's upcoming shifts. So you can see what you've got coming down the pipe. It can do time tracking. So the buttons you see in the upper left are punch in, and then if you're already punched in, it would be punch out. That data is saved in the database down to the second and can then be tied into timesheet. So there's a timesheet function that takes the shifts per pay period, puts it into a sheet. We have our own payrolls template on there that the students print out. I check it, sign it, and submit to payroll. So it's not completely paperless, but it's a lot easier than writing in times and hoping that they were in the right place. This punching in, punching out is restricted to certain IP addresses, so we can assure that they were at the particular location at the time of punching in and punching out. There is, and this is one of my favorite features, notifications for coverage anomalies. So if someone is scheduled to be in a location and they're not punched in at that time, 10 minutes after the hour, I get an email that says exactly that. If everything's good, I don't get the email. But if something's up, either because they had to drop a shift or because they're scheduled and not there, I get to easily know about it in case my day is busy and I don't notice it right away by looking at the schedule. Schedule, this is an example of what it could look like. It's pretty easy to change. The manager can make arbitrary shifts. One of the features that really makes filling it nice, it does not have automated filling like some of the other solutions we talked about. That is a shortcoming. That feature would be very nice, but the shift taking can be done by the manager, or it can be done by the employees. And there are some restrictions, some ways you can phase that to make it smooth for everybody. So for example, we can let everyone take up to 6 hours per week for a couple days, and then let everyone take up to 10 or 12 hours for a couple days. Keep things pretty even. It does require a little bit of rules around. Don't leave a hole of 1 hour because nobody really wants to trek across campus for 1 hour, something like that. That limit feature also comes in handy because they're limited to 20 hours per week, so we can put a hard cap on that. The different columns you see here are different locations. We have 2 chairs at our main desk, 2 different desks in our main library, and then an alternate library on the right there. That's different people in those locations. The blue shifts there are the shifts for the person who's currently logged in. And they can use the drop-down menu right there to temporarily or permanently drop those shifts if something changes. And then if they were empty, somebody else could temporarily or permanently pick them up to fill in. So after looking at a few different solutions, do the solutions make the management job easier and do it for you? Sort of. We do come out with some important features to consider. Any solution really needs to have access control for verifying that only appropriate people can get in, but also that any changes are authenticated. You've got, who's making any change, and also the roles. So there's an application administrator, there's the manager, and there are the employees actually working on their own schedule to have the different levels of access. As far as accessing a tool, really web access is probably the way to go. And having it be easily accessed on standard platforms you don't want to run into. It has to be a certain browser on a certain operating system with a certain plugin. It just gets messy. Consider local and remote access, so on and off campus. Students will often make changes from home, or if they went home for the weekend or traveled and they're not on campus, something went wrong with the plane schedule. You need to be able to make a change from there, so you don't have to be checking your email Sunday night. Some of the solutions have apps for mobile platforms. It's possible that some solutions have a full desktop application. I don't see any really popular tools that go that route because of the distributed access consideration. It's just, it would be redundant. Certainly the different types of solutions you can look at have varied support and varied costs. As I mentioned before, if you're really comfortable and have a good deal of developer time and resources available, that can be good. If you don't, but you have some money, that can solve that. So, taking some features and considering your needs, how do we evaluate what tools might be appropriate? First up is determining all of your needs. So coming up with some list of what you're looking for in a tool and what's more or less important in that list. So you need to come up with the absolute requirements and what would be really nice. You know, for example, a mobile app might not be required, but it would be handy. A lot of students have smartphones these days. Then look at the landscape. Figure out what tools might be viable and reasonable to consider. Get down to a handful of candidates to actually try out, and then really try them. Get some form of demo where you can actually see how the tool works and if it's going to be good for you. Marketing is really good at marketing, but it doesn't provide all the answers. And once you have data about the different tools, have some sort of rubric that you can use to quickly and easily compare them. I'm sure you would need to bring any results up to management, and they need an easy way to see why any one is better or not as good as another tool. An example rubric might be something like this, where you've got the different tools and whether they have a feature or not. I'm just going to qualify the data on here. This is based on my own observations and some discussions with colleagues. So don't take this particular data as hard and fast, but it's an example of what this might look like. So seeing which tools exist, particularly if you have prioritized features, can be a really good way to find front runners, maybe eliminating ones that don't have the required features. If you want to go a little further, you could add on quality or ease of use score. So if a feature exists, you can grade it. Made up the numbers here. These aren't even based on anything. They're just completely for demonstration purposes. But that can give you a sense of how well something would meet the needs. If something has a ton of features, but they're really poorly written, they might be buggy or just hard to use, then that's something you should know. Just because it has many features doesn't necessarily make it good. And if something turns out it has an excellent implementation of something you really want, that might be worth sacrificing something else. Ways to compare. So you can make pretty much any tool work if you really force it. The reason we look at solutions that automate some parts, facilitate some parts, is that managers have finite time, and if you're spending all of your day juggling the schedule, checking who's where, balancing everything, it's a waste of time that could be better spent. Look, comparing the different solutions, certainly you need to consider your environment. How many people, how many locations are you talking about? How well does your existing solution work or not? How much budget, money, or developer time do you have to consider? And how much complexity can you deal with? Can you really would you want to roll out an on-campus solution that ties into lots of things? The payroll linkage, which could be cool, but it might take a lot of time to set up. Or do you want something that's just kind of get in there, do some scheduling, have a nice day? Absolutely try before you buy. Get your hands on there. Make sure it works. You don't want to get a solution implemented. We've all been there that doesn't work as well as you were promised. And in the end, the tool facilitates the manager's job. It doesn't do the manager's job. The manager still absolutely has to be involved for people problems. So an example of that would be the student working in the evening in a remote location, comes in, punches in, was there on time, in place, in the chair, that's great, and then goes to get dinner for 2 hours, comes back in time to punch out, in place, on time, in the location, and gone. As far as the data knows, everything was good. But the tool just really can't do that sort of thing. So you still need people to manage, but the tools allow you to spend time on the people issues and the things beyond. So at this point, I'd like to open up for questions if anybody has any. If anyone would like to talk further, has ideas or suggestions in the future, my contact information is up there. I'd be happy to talk. So thank you for attending. I've had a good time.
Andrew, thank you so much for sharing all of the information you've gathered over the years. I think it was really important, and it's a great starting point for people looking for different tools and technologies to help them manage their student resources. For those of you who have been listening, thank you again for your time. We will be bringing you the next webinar in April. And with that, we will close this webinar.